In today's gospel, what we have is Jesus talking about the mysteries of the kingdom. We think about the fact that he had given the mission to the apostles. Now it's the mysteries of the kingdom. And the mysteries of the kingdom, he speaks in terms of parables. Parables are those kind of stories that a person has to enter into. They can't enter into it superficially. They have to go a little bit deeper and try to figure out what is the purpose in this particular story. So what we have is the story of the weeds and the wheat, the story of the mustard seed, and then lastly the parable of the yeast. In the first parable, one of the things that occurs is that, again, the wheat, there would be people, in fact, it was against Roman law to sow weeds into the field, because what would happen is that the darnel, which is a plant that would make someone very sick, give somebody a really bad stomach ache who would not feel good at all, was sown into the wheat because it looked exactly like the wheat right up until the time of harvest. And then the time of harvest, it began to differentiate itself. And so the wheat looked very different than the darnel. So they say, what do we do? Do we pull them up? And he says, no, wait until the harvest time because the roots have intertwined. One of the things about that is that sometimes, we think about with people and their public and private life, they try to do a dichotomy between their public and private life. And, if somebody at work has, maybe cheating on their spouse or things like that, it's certainly a horrible thing, but it's not going to have an effect upon your faith. But think about the damage that's been done by priests, by deacons, by bishops who have that double life, who do, look and the part of one thing, in their public life, but in their private life do something very different. Think about the damage that's been done on that. So we think about that, and it reminds me in the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 7, says, not everybody who says, Lord, Lord, will be admitted into the kingdom of heaven. And they'll say, well, wait a minute. We were preaching in the streets. We were casting out demons. We were doing all these things. He said, depart from me, you evildoers. I do not know you. So again, we want to get away from that dichotomy. And it's certainly the devil wants us to be in that public and private life, that separation. You earned it. Nobody's going to know, all these kind of things that go through the person's mind. But what you need is that accountability of good friends and people in your life to say no. If you feel like something is occurring, to be able to speak and to talk about it, and so not getting into that situation. In the second one is the parable of the mustard seed, and he says it was planted. Well, a mustard seed would never be planted. It'd be like planting bamboo or planting ivy. It'd be something that you would not want to plant because it would just take over. And I think that's the thing about the kingdom, is that certainly the kingdom will come and it will take over. The Roman Empire didn't want the Messiah to come. The leaders, the religious leaders say, well, we want the Messiah, but not you. We'll take somebody else, but not you. And so what happens is that it went and it spread. Think about even in very hostile areas, that the martyrdom becomes the inspiration for many people to become Christian by their willingness to die for their faith. So in spreading into even hostile territory. And then lastly, he talks about the kingdom of heaven is like the woman who took the 3 measures of flour and put the yeast into the 3 measures of flour. Well, one of the things about 3 measures of flour is that it's a huge amount. It's not just feeding the family. It would be feeding 100 or more people with bread, 3 measures of flour. So a lot. And so what it is, again, we think about Jesus, who came not just to preach and to teach, but he also appointed the apostles and the apostles went out and spread the message, especially after his passion, his death, and his resurrection, and ascension to the Father in Pentecost, where we think about them going out, first starting in Jerusalem and then a little bit into Samaria, and then because of local persecutions, going out and going further. And what we think about with that is that it wasn't just going to be a small sect of Judaism. It wasn't just going to be a little messianic sect that was there in Jerusalem. Maybe over time begin to die out, or maybe even still to this day, but still just kind of a small sect. No, what happened is the apostles went and they spread the message. So we think about the time of Peter and Paul and their martyrdom in Rome. By that time, the gospel message has spread to 3 continents of Europe, Africa, and Asia. And so the spreading of the gospel, not just to be this little sect. And so we think about, there was a commercial one time back in the early 80s about a hair product, and it said, you'll tell 2 friends and they'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. So that was really kind of the spreading of the gospel message, that the apostles went and they spread the message, and they infused others with the zeal and the enthusiasm of the gospel, and made them presbyters and sent them out and continued to spread the gospel message. So when we think about these particular parables, the mysteries of the kingdom, we think about the weeds and the wheat, that those who, that not everybody who looks the part is the part, that there can be this kind of dichotomy between the public life and the private life. We think about the parable of the sowing of the mustard seed, even in areas that are particularly hostile. And then we think about the fact that there is the spreading of the gospel message, not just in Jerusalem and Samaria and the surrounding areas, but to the entire world. And so when we think about the mysteries of the kingdom, they're spread in terms of those parables that really kind of help depict and help us to understand what is the church, what is to be the kingdom of God here on earth. Thanks, and God bless.